We are live on Facebook, so hello to everybody on Facebook. I'm just checking that the feed is up on Facebook and that everything is okay. I'm going to change the status of the feed to public. So we are now live on Facebook, and good afternoon. And this is a very special chat because I'm speaking to my friend Stephen Bray. Good afternoon, Stephen.
Hi, Steve. Yeah.
We've known each other since back in the academy days.
We have, but I think you were a Black Star.
No, I was a Power Network.
Well, you were Power Network. Were you the same? You were an Orange like I was.
Oh yeah, we were equals. We were
right.
equals.
Okay.
It was. I mean, I look back on the academy days now with a certain fondness because it was Facebook before Facebook, wasn't it? Because we had everything we needed to actually network.
Yeah. I think. It was very sad, really, when it. But everything has its day.
Oh, yeah, since then, everybody's moved on to Facebook, and that's where a lot of our friends are in the Prospect Networking group. And so, hello to everybody in the Prospect Networking group too. And today, with Stephen, I'm talking about writing and blogging. Now, as usual, before the broadcast started, I posted. We agreed to the questions, and the first question is, and I'm going to bring it up on the screen. How do you choose what to write or vlog about? And that's your starter for 10.
Well, it's pretty fundamental, really. I mean, the thing is, there are people that are professional writers who can more or less talk about anything. I mean, they're called journalists usually.
Oh, yeah.
And some people, aspire to be journalists. And if you ever get the opportunity to do any proper journalism, even if it's in a very small newspaper, I mean, it's worth doing because you will discover very rapidly all the ways to make the results of the Women's Institute competition in some village interesting. And this actually gives you a kind of creative edge. But once you get beyond that, then really you've got to have something to say. See, if you work for a newspaper or a magazine, the editor tells you what you have to say because there's a kind of editorial policy. When you start writing for yourself, the danger is that you don't have some kind of editorial philosophy that you're going to put out, and then you can kind of waffle a lot. So the first thing to do is to have something to say and to know what it is that you want to convey in a series of articles or in your book or whatever. So that's pretty crucial, really. I think the best writers are probably people that got into it by accident. They had something to say and then writing became their way in, rather than they've always wanted to be a writer. There are people that can write because they've always wanted to do so. They were good at essayists at school and those kind of things, but they got the bug very, very early on. It's not something that usually falls on you because you've been made redundant and don't know what to do. And you think that you can make a fortune on Kindle very, very quickly. I mean, very few people make money on Kindle, although a few people are fortunate and have done so.
Well, Kindle's opened things up, hasn't it? Because you can self-publish now.
Yes, you can, and of course you can do direct publishing, not just electronic publishing. You can publish hard copies of your book via Amazon as well, and that's quite a good way in a sense because if your book starts to get any kind of traction, then you'll get contacted by larger publishing houses that will then do things like distribution and so on, and Create Space, which is the Amazon hard book, real book publishing arm. They don't restrict you, so if you want to go somewhere else with your title, you can do so. You have to get a new ISBN number probably, but basically they'll go with you, and it's relatively straightforward to self-publish there. You can just use Microsoft Word to create a document, and providing you've got the right sizes, it will be there.
So it's Microsoft Word and the right images, but as you said, you've got to have the idea to begin with, haven't you? How did you get into writing? How did you?
I got into writing accidentally. I mean, I didn't actually ever think I would be a writer. I certainly didn't think I'd write any books. Basically, because I'm a little bit dyslexic and I tend to spell things phonetically. So I make a lot of mistakes in English, and I find writing as the technical task, as the grammar task, quite difficult. And the worst thing is that being slightly dyslexic, the more I check it, the worse it gets. So in a sense, the first take is the kind of the best technical grammar. Yeah. But it's not necessarily the best style, and the editing it tends to add more things to correct. So if I'm writing anything serious, I always work with an editor that can go through and kind of correct my stuff for me, and then it comes back to me from the editor, and I usually then tweak it so that it's a little more informal. But I think, even if you work on a newspaper or magazine, everything you write goes through the sub-editor or somebody else. So, yeah. Yeah,
I mean, I'm fortunate to Fraser edited the book that we did together and published earlier this month, because I would not have known where to start. And right, just whilst we are live, and I'd like to say hello to Eileen, to Jeff, and to Patricia. And we are talking today about writing and blogging, and I'm going to bring up the second question for Stephen Bray, who I've known for the last 10 years or so. And the second question is, and this applies to every writer, doesn't it? How do you cure a writer's block? Can you cure it?
Well, if you want to write, you've got to. And once again, I mean, you asked me how I got into writing in the first case just now.
I did, yeah.
Perhaps I should go back through that. I mean, I didn't set out to be a writer. I had a few things to say about in the discipline I was working in the time, which was in social work. And the SETSWA, who were then the accrediting body for social workers, asked us to go on a course, a number of us to go on a course, so that we could actually write stuff. And the course was very, very short. And to cut a long story short, we sort of had about 2 hours input one afternoon and were told to go and write something. And so we all went off and we all had a kind of different standard, but that actually gets you going. And from then onwards, I had the bug, which was to write, and to write in a way that was kind of fairly easy for people to understand. So that's how I got into it, and then I transferred that skill into various other places. Now, as to writer's block, the thing that taught me how to do that most was when I worked very briefly for about 2 years, I suppose, for a little provincial magazine that we used to print, and it used to come out every fortnight. And that meant that the night before the thing went to press, we kind of sat down and wrote the entire thing from various press releases and stuff that came in. And when you work completely overnight through that, you really are faced with some of the most boring material imaginable, but you've still got to get it out and make it look reasonable. So, you know, this is where I got the kind of experience of getting over writer's block, if you like. The key things that you can do are, first of all, to put something down, even if you're prepared to throw it away, and often you do have to, which is fairly common advice. But one of the great things that you can do is actually adjust your posture so that you're businesslike, because lots of people with writer's block actually kind of slouch around and they kind of get themselves into a kind of a depressed posture. And quite honestly, you can't write anything in a depressed posture. So, you know, your first discipline really is to sit up straight
Okay.
You know, to make your head kind of level, you know, and to actually, you'll begin then to actually get ideas that come into the top of your head. Now, I wrote a blog about this, funnily enough, on Blokes on the Blog, and if I was on my other computer, which doesn't work with what it be live at the moment because I haven't got the right browser on it, I would have been able to share it very quickly. But if you go there, there you'll find on Blokes on the Blog an article which is called How to Cure Writer's Block, which actually goes into this, and it also mentions a few kind of other tricks. But I believe that curing the main thing that you do is you actually have good posture. That's your starting point, basically, even before you put your first word on paper. And then if you have to throw away what you've done, you have to throw it away. And if you have to throw away several drafts of something, if it's a longer book, well, then you have to throw them away. But eventually you'll get something rather that actually makes sense to you.
Right. Now we've got a comment which is coming from Patricia, and I'll bring it on the screen. Patricia is a journalist, broadcaster, broadcasts every day to a local community. And her observation is this, that writer's block often happens when you try to write and edit at the same time. Practice writing whilst ignoring the self-critical voice in your head.
Yeah.
What do you?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But you still, but you know, then you have to also be prepared to have a red pen. You know, when you work for a magazine or something, the editor has a big red pen.
Yep.
When you're doing it for yourself, you've got to have a big red pen. You mustn't be in love with the stuff that you're writing. You know, you need to write it with the reader in mind, not with you in mind. You're not writing for you. You're writing for other people. You know, and by the way, I mean, most people, you know, there's something like, well, there must be sort of 200,000 words in the English language now. 50,000 are sort of obsolete, and most of us have a vocabulary of about 15,000. So, you know, highfalutin language actually doesn't sell anything. And even people that are intellectuals, believe me, they like to read simple writing rather than complex writing. And in fact, I think the art of writing in simple language is actually much more difficult than highfalutin writing and trying to show off with long words.
Which brings me to one of your books, actually, and I'm interested as to how it came about. And the book I'm thinking about is Photography and Zen.
Oh, Photography and Zen.
Yeah.
Okay.
How did that book actually come about?
Photography and Zen was really the first book that I wanted to write, but I wasn't confident that I could actually write it. I'd co-written a book about NLP with somebody before, but it was more of an editing job than anything else. And then Photography and Zen, I knew I wanted to write something about this because there's kind of a lot of hokum when you start attaching the word Zen to things. I mean, it has all sorts of different meanings these days that are kind of different from the original kind of Japanese Buddhism meaning. And so I really wanted to get into that and kind of say, well, how did this concept of Zen get into photography? So that was one thing I wanted, one dragon I wanted to slay. And the other side of it was I also wanted to talk about the path that people that aspire to be photographers are likely to go through. Because, you know, a photographer, sometimes, you know, a photographer can become very, very specialized and very, very narrow. They can be very kind of technical. They can create lots of very good technical material. But it may just be in kind of one form. But the really great photographers actually are very versatile. So they can turn their hand to virtually anything. And I was quite fortunate in my early studies of photography because I ran into this guy called Michael Eldridge. And basically he said, you know, you can come in, you can use a darkroom here whenever you want to. And you can even go to my painting classes if you like, I don't care. And, you know, just really kind of explore this material. And Michael went on to be the head of postgraduate studies in photography at what's now the Arts University in Bournemouth. And we still actually do work together. We've done some exhibitions together, and we teach together sometimes. So the second part, the first part of Photography and Zen actually goes through how the concept of Zen got into photography. And it goes through people like Henri Cartier-Bresson and so on. The second part of the book is actually my struggles as a young student, kind of working across with Michael as the kind of foil. So I would bring something and he would say, well, that's rubbish. And I would have to go it away, rather like, the Zen student says, oh, I've solved this mystery now, and the master whacks you with a stick. But the book has a structure. The second part of the book has a structure, and it's loosely based, although I don't say this anywhere, on something called the 8 Bulls of Buddhism, in which the Zen student goes through these various different different relationship to the bull and to life and to what's being discovered. So each of the chapters actually mirrors that kind of process and provides kind of exercises about it. So that was the second book that I wrote. As you know, I wrote before that the book about photography and psychoanalysis, how these two disciplines from the same period came together. And actually, now, for example, we're using photography, albeit electronic photography, to communicate. We take it for granted, but 200 years ago we couldn't do that. So, and psychology has developed at the same time. So the first book was about that, and that was easier for me to write in a sense. And the third book in the series, which I haven't dared to touch on, is going to be much more about the ways in which life puts different pressures on photographers that have trained and studied, and what it does to them. So it'll look at the people that kind of drank themselves to death and became corrupted by various things like commercial photography and so forth. But I'm a long way off writing that one as yet, but I always saw the 3 books as a trilogy.
Yeah. So that brings us neatly into the third question, and I'm just going to post it into the chat on Facebook. And the question, I just waiting for it to come back here, because I can actually post within BeLive. It will appear on Facebook, and then I can, after a second or two, I can show it on screen. So that brings us neatly to question 3. Must you plan your book, blog, or vlog?
Well, I think it's a kind of interesting question. It will vary from person to person. But I think the short answer to it is yes. But the longer answer to that is the more experienced you become, the less you need to. Particularly with the shorter things that you're doing, like blogs or vlogs. I wrote a daily blog for around about 8 years. Basically, I just took inspiration for what was going on in my life at the time, and was able to put in. Was able to sustain that, and I kind of avoided sort of, here I am cleaning my teeth, or this is the toothpaste I bought. There would be something rather that was amusing or topical that I could write in a blog. But a blog is a relatively short piece of writing, and it got easier really as time went on. Now, I'm talking about, the true nature of the blog, because actually blogging changed very shortly after I started. I got into blogging because I came to a website. I was looking for a graphic, and it took me to a website called corkscrewballoon.com, which is run by a man called Alf Eriksson. I'm not sure if he's still doing it. And he was an avid collector of corkscrews. He was a hot air balloonist, and he kind of traveled the world and spent his time either between Thailand or else the USA. So he had quite a kind of colourful life with sort of sojourns into Europe and things. And if he is still blogging, I'm sure he's not using WordPress, he's still using HTML. And his is a kind of real diary. And in the early days, blogs were real diaries, and then they became something else. They became about things like, how to vape or something like that. And there would be lots of articles on vaping and the best vaping tobacco and, the dangers of vaping and all of those kind of things. Or else it would be about some other topical thing, because the marketers kind of got in on the act, and they say, well, you can blog about a subject in particular, internet marketing or something like that. But the early blogs were actually like diaries, hence blogs. And so that was the sort of thing that I wrote over that period of time. They were always articles rather than advertorials, basically. And the inspiration of them came through from life. My wife, Iram, who's a psychologist, she writes a weekly article, both in English and Turkish. It's actually the same article, and puts up a YouTube video about it. And, hers are much more theme-based. They're about people's difficulties. They're still inspired by everyday life because they're inspired by the people that she works with. She doesn't mention people by name, but she finds that different themes tend to come up at different times. So she writes for those things, and she uses her articles as a resource. So she can, somebody might come with a difficulty and she'll say, well, actually, I've written an article about this, on my blog, and you can find it here. And she sends them the link. So it acts as a tool. And over time, that's kind of really built up. I was looking at her stats the other day, and she used to use about 256 kilobytes of bandwidth when she started, and now I've just had to increase her to 8 gigabytes.
Wow.
So these things grow, but the thing is, she does it every week. Every week she puts something in, and if you're going to blog, you have to be consistent in that.
All right.
So it comes back to having something to say. Did you want to say something else? Because I could talk more about this.
No, I was just, I'm just hit by 8 gig bandwidth.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Well, I haven't totally answered the question for you.
Okay.
Malcolm Gladwell, in one of his books, he points to this idea that in order to become proficient at something, you've got to put in 10,000 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to write, you've got to put in 10,000 hours worth of writing, really, to become really competent at it. And of course, blogging is a good way to do it. And the same is going to be true for vlogging and editing vlogs, which I haven't started yet, but I'm going to have a go at shortly. But I don't know whether you know, though, the world's most successful vlogger daily vlogger has just stopped publishing this week. His name is Casey Neistat, and he's based in New York. And it caused a huge furore across this kind of vlogging community, because this guy was producing sort of 10 minutes of video every day, and he has been for well over 18 months. So to give you some idea, to produce kind of 8 to 10 minutes worth of video probably takes between 2 and 4 hours worth of editing to get it right. And you've got to actually take in all the material as well. So, it's a huge undertaking, but he certainly is a very competent editor at the end of that kind of period of time.
Mm. So you say you just stopped blogging, but is there an increase in blogging? Well, first of all, can you explain what it is?
Yes, there is. Blogging. Well, blogging goes back. It's almost like the traditional blog, but it's made on a video. So people actually video their lives. Now there are, there is a certain amount of kind of YouTube teenagers that are, kind of just looking at the microphone and singing into it or doing something like that. It's not strictly speaking a vlog, but there are an increasing group of travel vloggers, for example.
Yeah.
There's a group currently in Bali who have come from a number of countries to be there. They usually carry, in addition to a small vlogging camera, they usually carry a drone.
Okay. Right.
To add into their shots. They go to places like crashed aeroplanes and disused temples, and as well as kind of surfing and doing stuff in the Maldives and what have you. Casey Neistat, he used to often be seen. He would film himself whilst riding an electric skateboard through the streets of New York, avoiding taxis and things, on his way to another meeting.
Yeah.
And the thing that they all have in common is these vlogs have pace. They're incredibly fast-paced and very, very tightly edited. But vloggers, they are able to travel across the world basically on sponsorship. I mean, they get some revenue from YouTube, AdSense revenue. They get lots of stuff sent to them by companies who just want them to open the box and say, look, I've got a new coat. There's a blogger called Sarah Dici who today was just sent a very thick coat by Hallie Hansen, and she was saying, I wasn't paid to do this, but this is a great coat. What they do is they take people into the kind of the intimate story of their lives, and you see them sort of vaping and all.
So how do you get started in vlogging?
How do you get started?
Well, because you're just starting up. What steps are you taking?
Well, first of all, I didn't set out to be a writer. I didn't really set out to be a vlogger. The thing is that my daughter wants to study film and video, and we came over here from Turkey to England so that she could actually go to a school where they taught this. The school actually closed, but the teacher is still available. But in order to kind of get behind and help her, we've kind of been studying a lot of video, and it seems like, given that I've done a certain amount of blogging and writing, it seems a good idea to try a bit of vlogging to see if we can make that work. So at the moment we're just kind of practicing our cuts and our edits, but at some stage we'll press the button and go live.
Okay, I've got the slide now, so we'll just...
Is it you or me that's echoing? It may be me. I haven't got my earphones in. I can put them in.
That's the key. There is an echo when I speak, so that's why I'm keeping quiet and you do the talking, and with no problems at all.
Okay.
But this is live broadcasting. I'd just like to say thank you to everybody who's been watching us today as we explored writing and vlogging, and sort of went into Stephen's books as well on Amazon, and I've given you a link in the Facebook feed where you can check those out. And because we do have an echo, I think what we should do is just ask you a final question for today, and then we should come back, say, December, January, and continue the chat.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay, right. My final question, and I'm putting you on the spot here, is what advice do you have for would-be writers that are starting out?
Well, it goes back to the first thing. I mean, you have, whether it's not just writing, I mean, it's writing, it's photography, it's filmmaking. You have to know what you want to say. That's the first thing. And then once you know that, then just do it. Do it.
JDI, just because do it. Go for it.
One of the wonderful things is if you go to some of these vloggers that I've mentioned, if you go to Casey Neistat, for example, and go back to his very first blog, it's actually technically quite crummy. There are other people as well that if you go back to their very first vlogs, they're really terrible. There's a guy called Christian LeBlanc who's got a blog called Lost LeBlanc. And he's so proficient now. I mean, the stuff that he produces technically is perfect. He has his drone, he drones over the surf and so on and so forth. You go back to his original blogs and he's running around with a GoPro camera on the end of a stick. You know, and the video's going all over the place. So you have to start somewhere, really. It doesn't matter if you think that, you know, you don't have the talent. The more you do it, the more you'll develop the talent. But if you don't start, you'll never develop the talent. And at the end of the day, you'll end up as a kind of frustrated old man or woman.
That's very, very sound advice. I can agree with that. I mean, I look back when the two of us and Kevin were on Blab, but really enjoying ourselves. I thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. And now 12 months later, we look back, and the quality then wasn't anywhere near what it is now, but the content was good, and that was the key, because we thought about the content, and the content we started producing then carried us forward. But now we've got I mean, Be Live as a platform. I mean, we're integrated with Facebook, where we can see the comments, and if need be, I could have chatted with you as well, and just demonstrate that before we go how far we've come. I can switch between showing Stephen on screen, I can show myself on screen, and I'm going to do this slowly. I can show the two of us together, and that's all from within Be Live. We can see your comments from within Be Live and respond to them. And Stephen, I'm glad to say that the echo that was there is gone. So we're today, and then, as I say, if we pick this up again in December or January, it would be good.
Okay, that'd be great. That'd be great.
All right. So, thank you to everybody who's watched us today, and thank you, Stephen, for your patience. I was stuck on the motorway when I should have been here. But we got on screen. That's the main thing. And thank you to Be Live, and thank you to everybody who watched. And Stephen and I will see you next time.
Yeah, thank you. Goodbye.
Okay. Cheers, Stephen, and catch you all later. Bye for now.